Hello everyone! I am just back from a very intense business trip down south, right there, Argentina. Yes, beautiful country. From the waterfalls of Iguazu down to the Tierra del Fuego, incredibly beautiful and very rich country. Unfortunately, what we hear about Argentina is not that good. We hear about devaluation, inflation, debt, crisis, all these economical figures. And we tend to forget that years ago, they were the ones pretty much feeding Europe at the end of the World War. It is that rich of a country. It still have its very famous asado, the very good beef. I mean, all this is still there, but in big economic crisis. So this is what I want to talk to you today, is the economical situation of Argentina, which I consider a bit of my third home. And I want to compare with my first and second home, meaning the US and France. So, first world, third world, new world, old world, I'm not sure. I don't like any of these names here. But let's start with the US. Fortunately, we all know the US debt, that very famous clock. It's, I believe, about 35 trillions today, but growing steadily, very high up. And I mean, we've just been devastated by 2 hurricanes, part of the country. I mean, very deeply hurt in certain places. And we're talking about the need for help. Have the 2 presidential candidates even visited? I heard one went, but I'm not too sure about the others. But yes, the main point is the help. Where is our tax money going? Why isn't it going to help the lawful tax citizens that have lost everything for some of them in some of the states? And why are we sending billions overseas to fight wars that are not even ours, right? But that's the US right now. Do we have a leader that actually, how do you say, walk the talk? Not sure here, right? Well, but let's look at France. Very interesting example as well. And for this, I'm going to share with you a few articles. But first, going back, if you remember, Macron, the French president, dissolved the Assembly, the Congress, earlier this year. So there were votes, very split outcome between the extreme right, the extreme left. And he finally made his mind for a new government with a prime minister that is tending more toward the right, but not the extreme right either. So first thing the government has to do, unfortunately, is look at the budget for next year and look at the spending. Yeah, we're talking money here too, because the debt is not good either when you look at France. But let's go into some numbers here. So the famous US debt clock, closer to the 36 trillions actually, which is about 106,000 per person living in the US. That's the US, but moving to France. So France, new government here. What do economists think of France's emergency budget to address the debt crisis? Crisis. Why is it a crisis? Well, because of the deficit, the level of deficit, which apparently is 6%. Also, I heard these numbers are not reliable and it could be higher than 6% of the GDP. But the rule for a European member, and France is one of the founding members of the EU, as per the Maastricht Treaty, is to have the deficit no more than 3%. That is the threshold. So we are twice as much, if not even more than the 3%. So the new government needs to carve it down. So the goal with this new budget is to reduce the deficit to 5% by the end of 2025 and down to 3% by 2029. So quite a few years. And to do so, the new government is targeting a total of 60 billion euros, either of spending cuts or tax hikes. So let's take a closer look to both actually the cuts and the hikes here. But pretty much we have no choice. As it's written here, look at this. The state of our public finances is grave. You bet. Yeah, public deficit could reach 7% of GDP by 2024, if these numbers are actually correct, which I heard some rumor it could be more. But let's say 7%, still far from the 3 we had years back. So what are the key measures? So the 60 billions, roughly 40 billions is going to be spending reductions, and 20 billions is tax revenues, more taxes. So let's look at the savings first. So they're going to cut government spending. Okay, it makes sense, right? And some of these cut, 21.5 billions, 15 is social security. Social security. When you think about it, it sounds nice, but it means also all the money the government is handing out. And that includes what? That includes the pensions for the retirement. And one of the measures that is proposed, because all this is proposal, it's not been voted yet by Parliament. And very likely it will not get approved as such, given how divided Parliament is. But social security is pension, and usually pensions get revalued to account for inflation on the 1st of Jan of each year. Well, 2025, they decided to delay it to July 1st. 6 months delay for the retirees to get a revalued pension to save, I believe, 3.6 billion. So that's quite a lot that's directly coming from the retirees. But apparently are getting too much on pensions, which I never heard of. Retirement being too high. Usually it's not enough. But another poll for budget cut is on the Ministry of Education. We'll see the largest reduction in headcount with more than 4,000 job cuts planned. So when you think about it, that's the future of our nation, right? The education of our kids. And education in France, in my opinion, has not improved over time. Since I was a kid, I've seen it go down rather than up. So 4,000 job cuts, I hope it's just people sitting in the ministry office, not doing much, and not the actual teachers, because the classrooms are already pretty full. Somehow I did not see the Ministry of Defense here in the job cuts and budget cuts, but who knows? So besides the cut, they want to raise money. So raising money through taxes. So increase taxes on business for the majority of it, which is not going to make France competitive and attractive for business to come, but also for individuals that earned above a certain level. So they're going to increase it. Keep in mind, France is already a very high tax country. It's above 45% for the high earner. And you also have already a tax on wealth if your wealth is above 1.3 million euros. So wealth is, you can just own a fantastic apartment in Paris that valued more than that and you can be taxed. It's your stock. It's pretty much what you own. But above all this, they're going to add an additional little tax on the wealthier, the high earner, just to help. So that is high earner. I believe the definition is 250,000 euros earnings income for an individual and 500K for a family. But it sums up all the taxes, right? But all this is supposed to help. So everybody has to help. The high earners, the retirees, education is coming a bit from everywhere, but without touching one thing, the Elysee, which is the equivalent of the White House, meaning Macron and its staff. Walk the talk, right? Right. So French audit court here criticizes the Elysee, the White House, spending on reception and trips. Apparently there's been an audit reviewing the finances and the spending, and they overspent, of course. So significant efforts will have to be taken starting in 2024. Well, that was published already in August, so there isn't much time left. In order to restore and perpetuate balance, warned the state auditors, calling out an 8.3 million deficit in the French presidency budget. So apparently it's coming from recession and trips. So here you see Macron welcoming the Prime Minister of India at the Louvre Museum. I would love to have such a private visit. And that actually, seeing that picture, that make me think of the Olympics and how much we spent with all the private visits and the like during the Olympics. But that's probably on a separate budget, not the Elysee here. It's probably on the Ministry of Sport. High deficit, most likely. But yeah, look at that. And what I heard as well is some of these deficit and some of the reason why he wants to keep his budget untouched is because of the business trips and trips he's taking to Ukraine. So here, looking at it this way, I mean, you would work in a company, okay, you need to save, cut some of the budget. Very often, the travels are some of the first to be cut because it's very easy to save on that. You have very modern technology nowadays, and instead of going, especially if you know the person, and at this point, Macron and Zelensky know each other very well after so many trips, right? They can do a Zoom meeting, right, from their office and pretty much cost zero and saving a lot of money for the taxpayer. But no, we keep going, travels, reception, walk the talk, right? Well, that is not necessarily the case here for the French president. But now moving south, let's go south and let's go to Argentina, where we had the new president, Milei, that took office late last year, I believe it was early December. And he was presented, let me show you a picture first. That's from the time where you see, yes, that's him, but I like the one at the top. Look at this. In the Casa Rosada, which is, for them, is the pink house, the White House. It is pink in Argentina. But that is him. And he's quite something, I would say. Not the usual president. He was called El Loco, the madman, for his profane outburst. I think everybody heard of him at this point in time. He's more of a libertarian, I guess, from his political view, qualified as well as, the right-wing populist movement that has won election around the world in recent years. He vowed to dismantle a corruption-riddled state ruled by shadowy elites. Let it all blow up. Let the economy blow up and take this entire garbage political caste down with it, he said during his campaign. And that is exactly what he's trying to do. And that's something that I found very interesting, talking to people, because Argentina is not doing the best economically, still not. But people still believe in this guy and what he's trying to accomplish, which is something I do not see in the other two countries. But let's go to this article here in El País. So that's Spanish newspaper, not Argentinian. It's regarding inflation. So Argentina had some of the worst inflation in the world last year. It went up. So this is on a monthly basis. So December, it went up to 25.5%. And what you see here is that he's been carving it down to 4% pretty much since May. I heard it was slightly going back up in September, which is the purpose of this article here, saying that the inflation is going back up in Argentina, which is a really bad notice for the government of Milei. But if you look at it on an annual basis, so 12 months rolling, you can see the trend here. It was up, 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 up. And from the time he took office, he's starting working on it. And it is going down. I mean, it's still 12 months rolling. It's still insanely high, above the 200%. But you can see a trend here. So how did he do it, right? How did he do it? Well, there's no secret. He cut costs. He really, really cut costs from the government. He fired over 70,000 public workers. So that's a beautiful view, actually, of Buenos Aires. If you look at it, here is the train station of Retiro. Here are some of it's very wealthy neighborhoods, very wealthy on that side. And here is the slums that have started getting built in the early 2000s. Actually, it's nothing to do with the government. They're just bigger. They grew over time, but it's a very good picture reflecting Argentina. The very rich here and the very poor right there. It's nice picture. But yeah, what did he do? fired quite a lot, cut on the spend, started deregulating and starting taking out some subsidies. For instance, let me take the example of the electricity here. Electricity, let's say you used to pay maybe $30 for electrical on a monthly basis for your apartment in Buenos Aires. With the subsidies, now without the subsidies, it went down up to 120, maybe 150. So it's a deep pain for the people there, a very deep pain, because everything costs more and the salaries, of course, are revalued with inflation, but never as much. So as a consequence, a lot of people are below the poverty level, and that's increased. I believe right now you've got over 60% that is below poverty level. But despite this, people are willing to still give him a chance. And that's a mindset I found very interesting in Argentina. They want the country to get back on track. And they want to take that much to get it back on track. And everybody has to really help. See, of the millions who can clear Argentina's official poverty level of about $950 a month in local currency for a family of 4, which really isn't much when you think of the cost of living in Buenos Aires. Even more have tumbled into destitution. Yeah. The poverty report showed that Argentina's extreme poverty rate had shot up to 18.1% during Milei's first 6 months as president, from 12% in the last half of 2023. So yes, it's not easy. It's a job crisis. Totally, people are struggling. Some have been laid off. It's tough. It is tough, but at the same time, the middle class is gone. Yes, it keeps getting worse. Yes, agreed. Sky high bills, what I mentioned here. It's hard. The situation is extremely hard, but they want to get out of what it was. They want to get out of what it was, which was a very corrupt government and a country going down. Another thing Milei did is that he stopped printing money. And for the purpose of the next segment on the cost of living, we're going to consider that this year, the 1,000 pesos is the equivalent of $1 or €1. It's close. So now let's talk cost of living in Argentina. Buenos Aires here. Let's talk gas. Driving a car, not everybody drives, and you don't need to drive as such in Buenos Aires. I went around with Uber. It was perfect and actually cheap. That's one of the things that is cheap. But if you want to fuel your car, so 1 liter of gas is between $1.1 and $1.3, depending whether you take premium or not. So it's roughly about $4 a gallon here, which is about equivalent to what we have in the US, I would say on that one. No big saving in Argentina. Eggs, 12 eggs, depending on the size, between $3 to $4. So here too, depending on where you live in the US, this is pretty equivalent to what I can find here in Texas, at least for eggs. Milk, 1 liter of milk is about $1.5. So here too, I would say probably, actually it might be a bit more expensive in Argentina compared to Texas. Now let's have a bit of fun. Let's go out. So if you want a steak, so I'm not talking about a big barbecue here. I did not do that. This was more of a steak house. Nice one. A big steak in a pretty decent restaurant. It's about $30 here. Now, after the steak, let's go and have ice cream. So ice cream, if you just want to have the simple cone, one flavor is about $4. And it can be more depending on how much ice cream you want and how many flavors you want to try. It was a good place. Now, I mentioned Uber. So to go around, this is actually pretty cheap. So my trip, I did about 20 kilometers, medium traffic. It took about 25 minutes and it was between $12 and $15. I did it a couple of times, morning, evenings. So not very expensive, I would say. Probably better to take a Uber rather than drive your car. But now let's look at rental. Living, I mean, you need to find a place to stay. Either you buy or you rent. So here I am talking, I did research online. We're talking about a nice area, not the most expensive, but nice. A 1-bedroom, 50 square meter, so not big, right? You have your bedroom, a living room, kitchen, bathroom, that's it. To rent in a decent area is about minimum $600, and their prices are very often in dollars, US dollar in Argentina, whether you want to buy or rent. Very often it's not in pesos. So that's really the minimum I found, $600. That's pretty expensive. And if you want to buy the same kind of apartment, it's going to be about $180,000. So not that cheap either when you think about it. So now, how much do people earn, right? Because you have to pay for all this. So just a few benchmark here that I got from friends. So if you are an assistant, so depending what the size of the company, whether it's an executive assistant or not, let's say between 1,000 and 1,500 per month that you're gonna get. If you are a senior accountant with experience, you can probably get twice as much, about $3,000. But yeah, it's when you look at the cost of actually finding a place to live, my electricity, because all this went up. Now you understand that a lot of Argentinians don't have the money to do all this. A lot of the time kids stay with their parents longer. That was already the case 20 years ago in Argentina. It has not improved yet on that. But yeah, just to give you some idea and sense of the country, it's not, I was expecting it to be cheaper actually than what it actually is. Some things are more expensive. So I didn't have time for shopping, but my friends, from what they say, clothes are actually more expensive in Argentina, and very often the quality is not as good. So for those with money, when they travel to the US, they actually buy clothes here, jeans. Electronics is also cheaper here. So there are a lot of items that often are imported and are much cheaper abroad. So just sharing some impressions here and first thoughts. I'm just back, still a bit tired. You can probably see it under my eyes. I'm recovering from the trip, intense trip, but it was fun and definitely a place to visit if you have not done so. It is fun and beautiful, but you need to get out of Buenos Aires. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching.